Well, the Lismore community is still reeling 12 months after floods decimated northern New South Wales, and that's not hyperbole in any sense of the word. The New South Wales Government has announced additional funding to help the community. Many residents are still cleaning up and living in temporary accommodation. Joining me live now is co-author of the New South Wales Flood Inquiry Report and our partner at PwC, Mick Fuller. Thanks so much for your time, Mick. Today, a really tough day for residents. Is it your view that governments are doing as much as they can, as fast as they can?
I think before this weather event and probably on the tail of the terrible fire season in 2019-2020 is that federal and the state and territory governments were investing lots of money into responding to natural disasters, but there was little money going into that mitigation and the prevention and planning phase to build resilience in communities, Laura. So I think it wasn't that people weren't investing energy. I just think we underestimated the cost of really building resilience in high-risk communities.
Your report, you're a co-author, as I mentioned. Are the recommendations in that report being followed?
They were all accepted, the 28 recommendations, and they covered a whole range of issues from flood rescue right through to the setting up of the New South Wales Reconstruction Authority, which has been established, and it has a new lead in Simon Draper. And the important part of that is really driving through any red tape that's holding up re-establishing communities. We know Lismore, 15,000 homes were destroyed, Laura. I mean, you think about 15,000 homes before you even think about light commercial and farms, agriculture, etc. So it was a huge disaster area, and that will always take years to resolve that. But there would still be people who are homeless at the moment, and we probably need to do better in terms of that.
Yeah, and we talk about Lismore a lot, just not because of the lives lost, but and the lives devastated, the livelihoods ruined. It's kind of a warning. It's become a bit of a blueprint of what to do, what not to do when you're in a disaster situation as it's unfolding, and what to do after. We're going to have to get a lot better at dealing with these kinds of events in the near future, aren't we?
Absolutely, and if you live in a high-risk catchment for flooding and or fires, is that you really need to be over the warning systems that are in place. And the advice to leave early is so important, particularly at the moment. We're seeing roads that are damaged at the moment just from storm activities. And if you overlay that with these East Coast lows that are stalling and dropping huge amounts of water, and one of those storm events up north, we saw nearly 800 mils in one town. I mean, you can't mitigate that. All you can do is warn residents, give them enough time that they can get their families, loved ones, neighbours, their pets, and get out. So then emergency services aren't focusing on just a huge volume of people to rescue.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it your view as well, after this event, I mean, there was so much anger directed towards the authorities on the ground. They were slow to pick people up off roofs. People perhaps needlessly lost their lives. We remember the Tinny Army. We remember, people coordinating on jet skis. Now, in a disaster, we often look to government to do everything, but as these events get bigger, they get more frequent. What is your view about the personal responsibility that everyone needs to take if you live in a disaster-prone area?
Look, I think we've seen through COVID, bushfires and the storm activities that we are a resilient community, that people are resilient. However, to be fully resilient, you need the federal government, the state government, the local government to work closely together and to have a plan. You're right, in terms of flood rescue, the SES was stretched, but any country would have been stretched given the number of people who needed rescuing. And that's why the mitigation, and part of the mitigation, Laura, is that investment in rain gauges and weather stations that have information that can be pushed out to community members, and the community members who've lived in these areas for generationally, who have such rich information that can help people make better decisions. I think part of it, yes, is certainly on us as individuals to understand if you're about to buy a place, is it in a flood-prone area? We spend so much time with pest inspections and building inspections, but there is information out there around flood-prone areas, and it's just so important particularly La Nina period, to be well and truly over that. So, look, some personal responsibility, but the federal government stood up a new agency as well, which will be so important to work with local, state and particularly local government. Local government, as you know, they're not well funded for big mitigation projects, and when you look at Lismore, they will need significant investment over a long period.
Yeah, they certainly will. Before I let you go, Mick Fuller, we have a unique opportunity, I think, in New South Wales with an election on the horizon. That is just a couple of weeks away. Is there anything you would put on the radar of both leaders that should be an election issue or that needs to be done sooner rather than later? What's at the top of your list?
Look, for mine, it is about how do you build resilience into New South Wales and true resilience. And it's not about saying how do you make each voter resilient, because, again, I believe individuals, we've shown that we are resilient. I think it's about how you make a solid investment into both state and local government, really well coordinated grant funding into the areas of most need, and particularly in terms of emergency messaging and warning. Those sorts of things that will help people make better decisions, that will ultimately save lives and ultimately as well save the taxpayers billions and billions of dollars in cleanups when we get it wrong.